Hello, I'm Suzanne James. Welcome to Nightshift, the podcast where we talk all things voluntary assisted dying in Australia. Very pleased today to be joined by Upper House Tasmanian MP Mike Gaffney. He's the independent MP who, with a very small team of one staffer, managed to get the voluntary assisted dying legislation brought in 2021. It was a unanimous vote in the Upper House, which was unprecedented worldwide for a private member's bill. He'll be joining us today to talk about the vexing issue of Tasmania being the only jurisdiction with VAD that doesn't yet have an online portal that doctors and clinicians use in order to process VAD applications. To talk to us a bit more about that now, Mike joins us from Devonport. Mike Gaffney, welcome.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Now, for the benefit of those who may not be as familiar with VAD legislation and operations as we are, step us through briefly, if you will, what the VAD online portal does, who uses it, and why it is such critical infrastructure.
Yes, as I will. I think the importance of this is that the model that we have in Tasmania, according to a number of the practitioners who've approached me about it, is quite cumbersome. It's repetitive, and they find it time consuming. Now, because we want those doctors and nurses who operate in that space, who play in that space, to be with us for a long time and to be able to offer their service to more than one or two people a year, we need to ensure that our system of management of the much needed documents that are required is as efficient as possible. And that's why a portal system, which has been chosen in the other states and now in the ACT, it was one of the recommendations out of the 23-24 Commission's annual report, is that an online portal be investigated in Tasmania. But it's only been the last 6 months I've been able to apply some media pressure and some conversation in the Parliament to ensure that going forward, our doctors have the capacity and the access to a more efficient online portal.
So, given it was passed unanimously with upper house support when the legislation originally came in, what are the blockers? After 3 years, I would have expected it would have been in place by now. What are the reasons you've been getting as to why this hasn't happened, Mike?
Well, I think there's the difference between the legislation and the implementation of legislation. The legislation says this is required at step one, step two, step three. This is the paperwork that is needed. The implementation process says, okay, this is what's required. How can we do that? And up until now, we've been using an Adobe or a OneDrive system where doctors would um, fill in the form, scan and send, fill in the form, scan and send. Now, I'm not certain the reason for that. I think it's possibly initially it might have been a financial one, but I think that the proof is in the pudding. The VAD in Tasmania is going exceptionally well. It's highly regarded by the community. And in fact, I would say once every 3 weeks, I'll be contacted by a member of the communities to say, Mike, I just want to say thank you for the work you've done with the voluntary assisted dying. My mum, my dad, my cousin, I was their best friend. So the feedback's been great. The navigation service has been good. All of these things have been positive. The one drawback I'm hearing from a number of doctors is that the system they use to manage the administrative tasks is time consuming, it's cumbersome, and in fact, I know of two or three doctors who have since said, I cannot continue operating in this way. If the portal was in place, a more efficient system, in fact, I could possibly take on more than one or two cases a year. So I think from that point of view, it's important that we get on board. And I tried to make a case to the government and to the people in Parliament saying, look, if the ACT, whose act began on the 1st of November 2025, if they've chosen a portal as the most efficient system, surely Tasmania should be able to do that. And to my pleasure, the now Minister, the Honourable Bridget Archer, has since come out and started procurement proceedings. So that's very good.
Excellent. That's great news. Now, how many VAD doctors do you have in Tasmania? Do you know?
Well, up until the 2025 annual report, it's not too bad. About 9% of all the medical practitioners we have in Tasmania are VAD trained or part
That's
of that.
impressive. Yeah.
That is impressive. And at this stage, we have a total of 535 who've done the training provided. But that's in our state. Our registered nurses can also do the training to be AHPs,
Yeah.
and 140 in total are practicing. So that's very good, because when I was doing my research early on, I can remember Portland, Oregon, with the 3.5 million people, they had 4 doctors available.
Wow. Yeah.
Not one doctor does this for the financial return. We need to make certain that it doesn't become a drain on them. And I've had comments from people saying that it has been. If we can change our system, and we should, it's not that expensive in comparison to the gains for our community for a long time. So I'm very pleased the current minister has accepted that and is going down the portal process. However, the proof is in the pudding, because it was just an estimates budget that we did in November. The budget comes down in May. So the procurement or the money for that VAD portal needs to be there. We can't wait for another 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
It needs to get in train and in place ASAP.
How much money are we talking about, Mike? Do we know yet, or are we waiting for some procurement information?
Oh, look, I've done my research and I've asked around anywhere between 900,000 in-house to 1.5 to 1.6 million dollars outsourced, which is, in Tasmania, with all due respect, we had a centre of excellence for football that went from 65 million to 130 million in 18 months.
Yeah.
Nobody batted an eyelid. Here we're asking for $1.5 million to actually get this up and running. I was quite pleased that when I had estimates, I had the Premier in there for estimates, and he made the comment about how the efficiency and productivity unit, and designed to look across the whole of government for exactly efficiencies and more productivity, also set up a portal. Oh, really? And how long did that portal take to set up? Oh, about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And did it cost much? No, we did that in-house. So
Okay.
if they can do portals for other parts of the government business, they certainly can do a portal for voluntary assisted dying, which covers the whole state. No friends, no favour. It just encompasses everybody. If the person is infirm, the navigation team will talk and get the practitioner to that person in their home for the first meeting. And then after that, the navigation people have been excellent in Tasmania. We'll take on board all of that negotiation and footwork. It's ridiculous to think a person who is suffering has to be forced to get out of their bed and travel places. And that's one of the right reasons, Susan, initially in the Tasmanian bill, the Victorian bill initially had specialists, had to be the second, the consulting medical practitioner.
Yeah.
We don't have that many specialists in Tasmania. We couldn't
nobody
afford,
does.
And so that was a nonsense. And while I'm going on about it, that was part of the reason why we actually included registered nurses or nurses as AHPs, because in a small community like, say, King Island or Flinders Island, the doctor may not be there, the doctor may not be wanting to be trained in it, but a community nurse trained and who has volunteered to do that training knows the family, knows what needs to happen, and instead of a locum doctor saying, well, it's got to happen by 4 o'clock Friday because they've got to fly out, the community nurse can say, when would you like this event to take place? Sunday, with the whole family around. So each state has its own little initiatives, I believe, and some of those will now come together, because when we first did it as the third state, we had to have a residency application eligibility criteria, because what we couldn't have is that other people coming from the other states, New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, that didn't have VAD at that time, coming as an influx into Tasmania that our medical system wouldn't have coped.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now that it's legal just about everywhere, none of that's become an issue. And many states are amending their bills as time goes on, which brings me to my next question.
yep.
Tasmania is due for its statutory review this year. I understand you had some delay with the early election down there last year, but that team's now being put together for the review to go ahead. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I'm very pleased. In the bill when I wrote the bill, the first 6 months we had are operational, which was good. And then usually bills or acts are usually reviewed every 5 years. But in this one, I said, look, let's have a review in 3 years and then every 5 years after that. So the review that's about to be undertaken, I've just been speaking with the Minister's advisor, and the names of the panel and the terms of reference will be released soon, very soon. That review will take place and it'll have the opportunity for individuals, for groups, for medical people to actually have input into what can be improved in the legislation. Now, that's great because I think that's how it should be. Legislation evolves. On the other hand, there's also the side of what can be improved with the implementation of the legislation, and that's another ballgame. So I think that both groups, the Commission, the Navigation Service, and the legislation, will be looking to improve on the Tasmanian VAD.
Well, it sounds like it's going great down there and that your new health minister is supportive and looking to procure some online portal resources. How do we shorten the time frame on that for you, Mike? Do people need to contact their MPs if they're in Tasmania? What can we do to help?
Well, I think one of the things that I was a little bit concerned about when I received correspondence from them, from the department saying, uh, now that Parliament has been prorogued and the review will take place, or after the review, which could take 12 months, they would be in a position to look. And I said to them, that's not soon enough, and to Bridget's credit, in estimates, she said the procurement had been signed. I'm certain that the money will be there when we have our the budget, which is soon to come down. But I'm sure they're working on that behind the scenes already because it was one of the recommendations from the 2023-2024 VAD Commission's report.
Hmm.
Suddenly, in 24-25, that changed to a data management system. Hello, that was pressure somewhere. So that's not right. And so we are going to get a portal, and you know, and good on them because the doctors need to be supportive in a way that's efficient for them so they can do their job without delays. And the good thing I like about the VAD community across Australia is that people are trying to help one another. I think get to a good place. There is
Yeah.
issues I know with prognosis and that sort of thing. There's issues with aged care and dementia. There are a few issues with hospices saying yes and no. So all of those things need to be resolved as best we can for the whole of Australia, not just state by state.
Well, it's great to hear that Tasmania's definitely got the portal underway, and I know how essential it is for doctors and clinicians. And it's also very good news that not just in Tasmania but elsewhere, nurse practitioners are being built into the system, especially in rural and smaller communities. That's an absolute essential element, and it's already showing its worth. So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier about the great feedback you get from the community. I know that you're still traversing the state regularly and talking to all sorts of groups at their request about all kinds of things in relation to voluntary assisted dying. So what are some of the groups you're speaking to and what are the feedback you're getting from them, Mike?
Well, I did sort of keep a bit of a record. I've just completed my 143rd forum
Wow.
with voluntary assisted dying. And that was one of the strategies when I first started. I did 35 forums in 4 weeks to
Yeah.
every local council area. Did that. I even was invited to speak at an environment conference once. And I said, what do you want me at an environment conference for? And she was very good. She said, Mike, we want you to come on and talk about how to create change and innovation within the field that you're in. And that's what we want some of our young scientists and young parks and wildlife officers and that to look at environmental issues with a different lens. So I was quite pleased with that. I did speak to 25 of our year 11 and 12 colleges who had voluntary assisted dying as one of their subjects in legal studies.
Wow.
And that was really good because you're talking to young 17, 18-year-olds who are very switched on.
Yes.
That was wonderful. I do get invited to go to Lions clubs and all your different community groups, and they're lovely. They just want to know more about it. But I put it out there because I think it's really important that we continue the conversation, and we continue to make certain that it's not a hidden practice. It's a medical option, and that's the way I see it for those who are eligible. And even last week, I had contact from a friend of mine who said his wife's sister was having the event on Saturday, and just wanted to say thank you for the legislation and how much already peace that was bringing to the family, because they knew why they were going to be there and what was going to occur. So that feedback, although at times can be a bit hard, it's always positive in the fact that at the end result is less suffering. 80% of people who are eligible for voluntary assisted dying actually don't end up taking the medication, but they have a better quality of life because they know that if things do get too bad, they have got a way, they've got a pathway, and I think that uncertainty of that pathway is the thing that scares and worries most people and their partners. So I even had a friend of mine called me. I hadn't seen him since high school, and that was like 50 years ago. And he said, "Oh, I just want to say thank you for the legislation." I said, "Oh, you've got your mum or your dad or whatever." He said, "No," he said, "I'm actually taking it on Sunday." He said, "I've had enough, and here I am." He said, "I just wanted to say thank you." And it's a really hard thing, and I don't mean light, but it's like, how do you finish that conversation? Well, I hope it goes well, or do you know what I mean? It's one of those
Good luck.
things. Yeah, good luck. And we both
see you on the other side.
we both had a bit of a laugh about it. He said, "No," he said, "Thank you." He said, "I'm actually quite pleased that I know the person who introduced the legislation to Tasmania," and that was a bit that was touching.
Yeah. All right, Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today. Thank you so much for your time to give us the update on Tasmania.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to Night Shift. Mr. Mike Gaffney, he's an Upper House MP in Tasmania who was responsible for getting their legislation through for voluntary assisted dying back in 2021 with a unanimous vote for it in the Upper House, which is unprecedented worldwide at the time. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Suzanne James.